I'm Rob Port from SayAnythingBlog.com, North Dakota's most popular political blog. Here with Public Service Commission candidate Blair Thoreson. He's also a state representative, Blair Thoreson, from the Fargo area. Blair, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your campaign for the Public Service Commission. Tell us a little bit about what your plans are, why you're running for the Public Service Commission.
I'm running for the PSC because we need to have a strong voice in this role who's going to make sure that the overreach of regulations coming out of Washington, D.C. doesn't impact our state. We're seeing this time and again where the EPA and other agencies are focusing on places like North Dakota that are successful, and I'm going to make sure that I'm there to put a stop to this because we can't allow this to happen. We're the shining star in the United States right now, and if we let these things occur and a Democrat takes the seat, we're going to lose that stronghold that we have.
You know, that's a little bit of a different approach. Most of the time when you hear public officials talk about, applying regulations and things like that, they're always talking about protecting the public from the private sector. But here almost you would see this role as more almost protecting the private sector from the government in a way. Would that be accurate?
Indeed it is. Now, I want to make sure people understand that, part of the role of the PSC is to make sure that the consumer is represented, and I'm going to do that also. But I want to balance that with knowing that business in our state is working hard to create jobs and improve our economy. And if we're going to have an overreaching regulatory environment, that's going to hinder them, and that is going to be bad for all the consumers of the state of North Dakota.
Are there some specific areas? Obviously, some of your fellow Republicans have been holding down the seats in the Public Service Commission for quite a while now. But are there things that you think that the Public Service Commission could be doing better, or are you more looking towards sort of carrying on the tradition set by the existing public service commissioners?
Well, the commissioners there are doing a very good job, I must say. Tony Clark, whose seat I'm seeking, has decided not to seek election once again and is actually going to be moving on to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which is a big plus for the state of North Dakota to have one of our own in that role. That's a very powerful agency in Washington and can help with our energy industry. So I obviously support and appreciate what they've done. I want to bring some additional things to the job, including looking at working with other states to make sure, for example, that our power can be transmitted. North Dakota can generate the power that these other states crave, but right now there's roadblocks being put up. So by ways of things like doing compacts with other states and those sort of things, I want to use those to help move our product to market and make sure, again, that we're keeping our economy moving forward.
When you talk about roadblocks being put up by other states, would you be referring to, for instance, the state of Minnesota? And I know that North Dakota is beginning a legal battle with Minnesota over, they're basically putting, I guess, what it would amount to interstate trade tariffs on coal-fired power coming out of North Dakota. Are those the sort of impediments you're talking about?
Exactly. That's the type of thing that we have to watch out for and stand strong against because, again, we have a product that Minnesota, frankly, needs it, and yet a small select group of people there is trying to put a stop to it. Saying that, is this a brown electron or is this a green electron? Which one is going to come across the grid? Well, the fact of the matter is they need all the power that we can supply to them. So we need to work with them, but also stand up against anyone who's trying to put a stop to this.
Obviously, you're up against State Senator Randy Chrisman for the nomination. You two are competing with one another, and I know in the past you've expressed a lot of respect for Senator Chrisman, and I know he's done the same for you. But obviously, there's a reason why you think Blair Thoreson would be a better pick than Senator Chrisman. What's that reason?
Well, again, Randy is a personal friend. We're running this campaign as friends, and we joke a lot about it. But I think that I do bring some certain skills to the job that would be beneficial to the people of North Dakota. First and foremost, I have 14 years of experience in the private sector working in telecommunications, which is an area that the PSC deals with on a daily basis. I've spent about the past 2.5 years working in the energy sector in our state, so I have firsthand knowledge of those two areas. And that includes a lot of time in western North Dakota, where they're seeing a big impact, obviously, with energy and some of the strains that it's putting on their infrastructure. I've tried to work in my legislative role to alleviate that, but I've seen it firsthand. I also have a lot of leadership on the national level. I chair a committee with an organization called the American Legislative Exchange Council, chairman of their Technology and Communications Committee. I've previously chaired the Communications Committee with the Council of State Government, another organization made up of 3 branches of government, and have been recognized kind of on the national level for my skills with this. I was just in Washington, D.C. about a month and a half ago at NARUC, which is the kind of the industry organization for public service commissioners, presenting there. And just this last week have been asked to be a presenter with the Wireless Association, the trade industry for the cellular telephone industry, on telecom and what we need in the rural areas. So I want to bring the expertise that I have working in our state to these national organizations to try and get them to place some more value on what's going on in our state.
What do you think? Because a lot of people, they think of the Public Service Commission, and I'm not sure that they understand entirely what the PSC does. I think obviously they know it's energy related in a lot of ways, has a lot to do with oil and coal and things like that. But what do you think the biggest public misconception is about the Public Service Commission?
I think maybe one of the things they think is that they have a bigger hand in some areas than they really do. Now, the PSC is obviously a regulatory agency, so it does have some broad powers to put a hindrance to certain things or to promote certain things. But, for example, like I just referenced wireless. I know that became an issue in the campaign several years ago where people in the state obviously were concerned about their cellular telephone service. The PSC does have a Zap the Gap program, which is in place to help identify areas, but they don't really have the authority to say, you must go in here and do that. However, having said that, we need to have commissioners who are strong in their role with working with the private sector to show why it is that we need to have those increased things put into our state to help the consumer. The PSC carries such a broad portfolio, from everything to grain elevators, railway regulation, weights and measures, abandoned mine lands. There's just a huge area that it deals with. So when people think about it, they may only think of one of the industries and not realize that the 3 commissioners are actually handling a broad portfolio and really have to spend a lot of time looking at the issues, how it's going to impact the consumers and the businesses of our state. And that's what I want to pledge that I will do. I'm going to take the time to research those issues, to read through the dockets, to make sure that I have as much information as possible before making a decision on the commission.
Obviously, you don't have the nomination yet. That's something that will be settled this weekend between yourself and Senator Chrisman. But supposing that you do get the nomination, you go on, you're in the general election campaign. Your Democrat opponent at this point is set to be Brad Crabtree, who ran for the Public Service Commission in the last cycle against Commissioner Kevin Kramer. What would you expect to be the big issues in that campaign between you two gentlemen, if you are indeed the nominee, and how would you differentiate yourself between yourself and Mr. Crabtree?
I think there's a stark contrast between Brad Crabtree and myself in the fact that he sees everything in an environment of where do we start with regulation instead of where do we look at what the businesses are doing themselves to make sure they're doing the best job. I look at this as a private sector, pro-business, pro-growth type thing, whereas he would see things as we have to confine it, restrict it, slow it down, increase the amount of money that businesses are supposed to spend on things. And for an example, I was telling somebody just recently, if you take his vision of where we'd be as to where I am, it's like comparing the old 6-digit calculator to the iPad 3. I want to be living in the iPad 3 world. I don't want government to be so restrictive that we're still 30 to 40 years behind in things. And so I'd love to take that message to the voters of the state of North Dakota, to go one-on-one with him and say, here's where limited government, free market principles can make a better difference for the people of our state.
Last question. 2 of the public service commissioners who are running for U.S. House this year, Brian Call, Kevin Kramer, are the subject of a lawsuit that was filed by the Dakota Resource Council and the Sierra Club, alleging sort of a quid pro quo or an inappropriate relationship between themselves and coal companies. And at the heart of that are political contributions made from coal interests to their political campaigns. Now, obviously, those donations were made legally; they were disclosed as required by law. But what the people filing this lawsuit are alleging is that because they accepted these contributions and are in turn going to be ruling on a permit for a coal mine that is important to those coal interests, that there's some sort of ill doing here. Now, this is obviously an office that you're running for. You're accepting political campaigns or political contributions now. What do you make of this lawsuit?
Well, I think, again, it's just narrow-mindedness by a small group of people who want to try and hinder the people doing the job, such as Commissioners Kalk and Kramer are doing. And the thing is, we have a structure in place for what is a legal campaign contribution and an illegal campaign contribution. If they're doing something untoward, they should be held in check for it. But if it's a legal contribution, I trust that those two gentlemen know that they still have to listen to the 600-plus thousand people of our state before making a decision rather than just a special interest. And that's why I've said I'll take legal campaign contributions, but I also want people to know that at any time, if they have a problem with what I'm doing as Public Service Commissioner, they can call my private cell number. I'll give you the number right now, 701-793-7134. That's not through a secretary or an agency. That's to reach me directly and say, listen, we need to talk to you. We have some input on this issue also. Please hear us out. That's what I pledge to do as your Public Service Commissioner.
Representative Thoreson, thank you so much for your time.